Gosh, it's hot today, but that's enough talking about me. What I want to do now is talk to you why I think retrophilosophy is important, and I want to illustrate it in two ways. One that's personal to me, and the other one which is more general. So starting off with the personal reason, look at me and my distinguished grey hair now. You can see that the twilight years are not far away, and it's quite a disconcerting thing to reach middle age and realise that don't actually believe in anything. You can criticise somebody's political or religious views or scientific views, but if you actually said, what do I believe in, then I can't. And I call that being defined in the negative. And before I die, I'd like to be able to be defined in the positive, to say this is what I believe. So being brought up in an atheistic household, never really had much sympathy with religious thinking. I apologise for that. Very scientific background, did lots of science degrees, and I go along with the broad scientific thrust. But at the same time, there's so much we just don't know. What's space? What's time? There's so many impossible things that have happened. The Big Bang, the DNA just bubbling out of the primeval brew, single cell organisms coming together, everything being just so perfect. Science seems to have the process and the equations right, but not the origins or the starts. And philosophy, very clever, very well thought and constructed. You can't help thinking if the philosophers were alive today, they'd come to very different conclusions. So that's my first reason, which is that I'm not convinced by any of those channels or the disciplines, and I want to have a better idea of what's been going on before I'm down there. The second reason is that I suspect the answer is in front of our very noses. The pre-Socratics certainly did that, and with their very limited knowledge were able to make some extremely perceptive calculations as to how they thought things were the way they were. And I want to illustrate it with an analogy, and it's an analogy of the bee and the beekeeper, because you've got your bees buzzing around the place, flies off to his hive, and he can just about make out the beekeeper, aware of it, as long as it's not causing him any harm. He's not going to sting it or anything. He's just going to buzz around, flap, and go around. It might be vaguely aware on the outside of his very limited senses, but there's no brain power to put into the analysis. It's very different for the beekeeper. He can kill that bee. He can breed different sorts of bees. He can take the honey. He can now understand the physics of how that bee flies. He can look at the genome of the bee. We could probably genetically modify bee. We construct three-dimensional bees on television screens and video games. And how long is it before we can actually create a bee? I just don't know. The point is that that beekeeper is in plain sight of the bee, but the bee just doesn't know it. Perhaps the difference between us and the bees is our knowledge is accumulating, whereas a bee has very limited knowledge. So our knowledge is accumulating, and as we accumulate, we're able to put more and more bits in and work out. It's like one of those TV shows where they put more and more pieces and you have to guess what it is. And I think that to some extent retrophilosophy is about drawing the narrative between the pieces. We know this, and this. What makes sense of that? What's the narrative that comes to truth? So there you are. I'm hoping that retrophilosophy will give us a better answer to some of the questions that humanity's always asked itself, so that I can go from the negative to the positive. I don't know if it's a new way of looking at old problems or an old way of looking at new problems, but whatever it is, I'm hoping that we'll come up with better solutions than we have now by just being stuck to the narrow disciplines. So it's hot. I'm going to sit back Oh, and relax. See you next time. Bye bye.